Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. Our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 8334 Valdez is the number. And Robert Hur, special counsel, he took the stand today in Capitol Hill, I should say. And he was getting grilled by Democrats. He was getting grilled by Republicans. He was getting grilled by everybody because he was what appears to be honest in his report that Biden's memory faltered. Now, you had some Democrats lobbing allegations against him, saying that the only reason that you're doing this is because you want to get a job when Trump is elected. Listen to this, cut number 8 from Hank Johnson.
But you are a Republican, though, aren't you?
I am a registered Republican.
Yes, sir. And you're doing everything you can do to get President Trump reelected so that you can get appointed as a federal judge or perhaps to another position in the Department of Justice. Isn't that correct?
Congressman, I have no such aspirations, I can assure you, and I can tell you that partisan politics had no place whatsoever in my work. It had no place in the investigative steps that I took. It had no place in the decision that I made, and it had no place in a single word of my report.
Again, that is special counsel Hur to Hank Johnson. Again, they're trying to taint this. And again, both sides will do this, right? We'll be like, oh, come on, Obama judge. Right? So now they're Republican special counsel. That's it. It's the fix is in. And the reality is you have to have faith, right? You have to have faith that these folks that have taken an oath to serve are going to do the right thing. Now, in looking at the report, it looks, again, I'm partial to it because it tells the truth about Biden, and I want people to tell the truth about Biden. I think oftentimes he gets a pass, right? And one of the more bombshell, and we got a lot of audio here. You've heard some of it today. You probably haven't heard it all, but that's kind of what we're here for, to make sure we watch the whole thing and get you the best parts of it. But there's plenty. There was a part where the exchange involved, did the White House ask you to edit the draft of your document? And the special counsel says yes. There's another one where Congressman Matt Gaetz questions him and says, when Biden said X, Y, and Z, that he did not illegally obtain the classified records, he was not telling the truth. And the special counsel says that's not consistent with the report. He says, so regular people would say that's a lie. And he says, yeah. And he agrees that Biden lied because, again, the facts are not consistent with what he found in the report. Then you've got this cut number 5, Chairman Jim Jordan, Judiciary Committee, point blank going after the motivation for why this whole thing happened and coming up with a number. Apparently, Biden made $8 million from a book deal advance, and that's why he was taking all these documents in the first place. Listen to this.
Because here's the scary part. Page 200. I said this earlier in my opening statement. Page 200. Joe Biden, this is a quote, Joe Biden risked serious damage to America's national security when he shared information with his ghostwriter. Shared it with his ghostwriter, the guy who was helping Joe Biden get $8 million. And oh, by the way, Mr. Hur, what did that ghostwriter do with the information Joe Biden shared with him on his laptop? What did he do after you were named special counsel?
Chairman, if you're referring to the audio recordings that Mr. Zwanitzer created of his conversations with
exactly what I'm referring to.
He slid, if I remember correctly, he slid those files into his recycle bin on his computer.
Tried to destroy the evidence, didn't he?
Correct.
He slid them over. He slid the audio files into his recycling bin. Now, again, if you're not very technically savvy like me, even I know that's when you hit delete on stuff. It ends up in the recycling bin, and you can get it back later unless you've emptied the recycling bin. This is clear. He asked him, so he tried to destroy the evidence. He says, correct. He tried to destroy the evidence, didn't he? Correct. Confirmed by the special counsel. You've got the clip with Gates. We have time for that. Let me play that one for you as well. Number 6. This is Robert Hur at this hearing again, admitting that Biden was lying when he insisted that he did not share classified information with his ghostwriter, who, by the way, we don't know who the ghostwriter is. Who is this ghostwriter? Where do they come from? What are their interests? Are they Americans? Is it just like a publisher or somebody hired by a publisher? Is it a foreign entity? Is it Hunter Biden? You know, who is this person that's getting all of this classified information? Are they doing it under the guise of saying, oh, we're writing a book? You know, the old saying when people ask a lot of questions, trying to spy on you a little bit. What are you, writing a book? You know, maybe that was the case. Maybe these were spies. I mean, this could be endless. And we need to know what's going on. Listen to this.
February 8th, the White House question, Mr. President, why did you share classified information with your ghostwriter? The President, I did not share classified information. I did not share it. I guarantee I did not. That's not true, is it, Mr. Hur?
That is inconsistent with the findings based on the evidence in my report.
Yes, it's a lie. It's just what regular people would say, right? Yeah, all right. So the next one. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. That wasn't true either, was it?
That was inconsistent with the findings of our investigation.
Another lie, people might say, right? Because what you put in your report was among the places Mr. Biden's lawyers found classified documents in the garage was a damaged open box.
A damaged open box. Now, that wasn't the only place in these damaged open boxes where Biden had these top secret documents and other classified information laying around his unsecured house that's not protected by the Secret Service and where he had no authority to even possess these documents, not even as vice president. But it gets better when he is now questioned by Congressman Kelly Armstrong and asking him to list all of the places that Joe Biden's documents actually were found. Listen to this.
Classified documents were found at the Penn Biden Center?
That's correct.
They were found in President Biden's garage?
In Wilmington, Delaware, yes.
And in his basement den?
Also in the same home, yes.
And his main floor office?
Correct.
And his third floor den?
Correct.
At the University of Delaware?
Correct.
And at the Biden Institute?
Correct.
All right. And the elements of the crime for this, I mean, we get into all of this, but the elements of the crime are pretty simple, right? President Biden had unauthorized possession of a document, writing, or note. That's correct.
Correct.
And that the document, writing, or note related to national defense.
Correct.
And that the defendant, and we may talk about the willfully part here in a second, retained the document, writing, or note and failed to deliver it to an employee or officer entitled to receive it.
Correct. There is a willfulness intent element, as you say.
But those are the elements of the crime.
Including the intent element, yes.
Well, there you have that. Stuff's laying all over the place, and he intended to break these rules because he was making $8 million on a book deal. Easy enough, right? Well, we're going to continue this conversation with federal prosecutor Doug Burns. He's coming up a little bit later to help us understand why they found this evidence of criminality, of willful intent, and didn't take action. And as you know from the original report, had to do with Biden's state of mind. But there were huge wins on the school choice front. Now, I want to get into that when we come back from our break because this is probably one of the most decisive things that we're going to fight for as a people, is for people to have an education that's not constricted by the government. And I think it doesn't matter what stripe you are from. You could be a Democrat or a Republican. You could hate my guts. But if I can provide your child with an opportunity to have a better education and you live in the inner city or you live in a nice neighborhood, it doesn't matter where you live. If you have access to the best school because of school choice, you've just made yourself a friend. And there were some huge school choice wins. We're going to talk with the executive director of the American Federation for Children. That's right, not the American Federation for Teachers, the American Federation for Children. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back, familia. We'll continue our conversation on school choice momentarily, but I wanted to just put a pin in a couple of things on this Robert Hur testimony, because, again, there were some really good exchanges that oftentimes we wouldn't be able to bring you because of the sake of time or because of a guest or whatnot, where we'd have to cut them short. But they're really interesting exchanges, and I want you to hear them in their entirety for the context of it so that you're fully aware of what happened in the hearing today. And one of them, kind of start at the top here with Robert Hur, kind of his initial assessment. He explains what the report was about and the relevance of it. And he tries to correct the record on Biden's memory, in effect saying it's about Biden's memory, but it was necessary and accurate for me to talk about his memory, but I wasn't trashing his memory, right? And he kind of, like so many in Washington, tries to kind of have both ways on this. But I understand where he's coming from, saying that the evidence and the president himself put his memory squarely at issue. So memory was an issue. And then at the same time saying his job was to figure out if we could get a guilty conviction on this. And ultimately he felt, I don't think we could get a guilty conviction. And any one of us could have done that report, right, and said, yeah, good luck finding, a Washington jury with all, 19,000 Democrats in a town that's got, I don't know, several million people. It's just not good. You're not going to find a sympathetic crowd, any jury that's going to do that type of thing, at least in my opinion. That's what I think. But I want you to listen to Special Counsel Robert Hur, who investigated Biden for classified document mishandling. Check this out.
There has been a lot of attention paid to language in the report about the president's memory, so let me say a few words about that. My task was to determine whether the president retained or disclosed national defense information willfully. That means knowingly and with the intent to do something the law forbids. I could not make that determination without assessing the president's state of mind. For that reason, I had to consider the president's memory and overall mental state and how a jury likely would perceive his memory and mental state in a criminal trial. These are the types of issues that prosecutors analyze every day. And because these issues were important to my ultimate decision, I had to include a discussion of them in my report to the Attorney General. The evidence and the president himself put his memory squarely at issue. We interviewed the president and asked him about his recorded statement. Quote, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs, end quote. He told us that he didn't remember saying that to his ghostwriter. He also said he didn't remember finding any classified material in his home after his vice presidency. And he didn't remember anything about how classified documents about Afghanistan made their way into his garage. My assessment in the report about the relevance of the president's memory was necessary and accurate and fair. Most importantly, what I wrote is what I believe the evidence shows and what I expect jurors would perceive and believe. I did not sanitize my explanation, nor did I disparage the president unfairly. I explained to the Attorney General my decision and the reasons for it. That's what I was required to do.
Again, that's Special Counsel Robert Hur giving testimony on his report today as he's being grilled by Jim Jordan and the rest of the House Judiciary Committee. And This goes on. They continue this discussion, and it leads to another interesting exchange where now Adam Schiff, you remember Adam Schiff, right? Adam Schiff for brains. Him and Mr. Hur now get into an exchange where Schiff tends to lean on him, and he says, I needed to make my report fit for public release. And as we know, the White House also wanted him to make edits to make the report fit their narrative. Listen to this.
But what you did write was deeply prejudicial to the interests of the president. You say it wasn't political, and yet you must have understood. You must have understood the impact of your words. You must have understood the impact of your decision to go beyond the specifics of a particular document, to go to the very general, to your own personal, prejudicial, subjective opinion of the president, one you knew would be amplified by his political opponent, one you knew that would influence a political campaign. You had to understand that. And you did it anyway. And you did it anyway. And let me just go to some of the differences here between the president's conduct and Mr. Trump's. In the superseding indictment, on page 3, it says that Mr. Trump suggested that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that he did not have documents called for by the grand jury subpoena. You didn't find anything like that with respect to Mr. Biden, did you?
Congressman, I do not have the Trump indictment in front of me, but I need to address something that you said in your prior question. What you are suggesting is that I needed to provide a different version of my report that would be fit for public release. That is nowhere in the rules. I was to prepare a confidential report that was comprehensive and thorough of an
What is in the rules, Mr. Hur, what is in the rules is you don't gratuitously do things to prejudice the subject of an investigation when you're declining to prosecute. You don't gratuitously add language that you know will be useful in a political campaign. You were not born yesterday. You understood exactly what you were doing. It was a choice. You certainly didn't have to include that language. You could have said vis-a-vis the documents that were found at the university, the president did not recall. There is nothing more common. You know this. I know this. There is nothing more common with a witness of any age when asked about events that are years old to say, I do not recall. Indeed, they're instructed by their attorney to do that if they have any question about it. You understood that. You made a choice. That was a political choice. It was the wrong choice. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona, did special counsel wish to respond to that final question?
Yes, Congressman, what you are suggesting is that I shape, sanitize, omit portions of my reasoning and explanation to the Attorney General for political reasons.
No, I suggest that you not shape your report for political reasons, which is what you did.
That did not happen, Congressman. That did not happen.
So you could see it seems that Democrats are very upset with Mr. Hur. Some Republicans seem to be grilling Mr. Hur. Mr. Hur was in the hot seat for about 6 hours, and we're going to continue breaking this down with former federal prosecutor Doug Burns. He's coming up at the bottom of the second hour, and we're going to discuss his experience as chief of the criminal division at the Department of Justice. But straight ahead, I want to talk about these big wins on the school choice front. What happened, where it happened, and why it's happening. Cory DeAngelis is our guest. He's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And as we discussed just before the break, big wins on the school choice front. Over the weekend, I was doing some commentary at Newsmax TV and bumped into the executive director of the AFC. And this is important, right? The American Federation for Children, because I've always thought, why would we have an AFT? Why have a federation for teachers? And not that teachers don't require representation. Sure they do. But it shouldn't, when you have a school, the majority of the people in the school are children, right? Students. So I think, somebody's got to look out for the students if there's clearly a very powerful lobby for teachers. And I love that the American Federation for Children does that. And Cory DeAngelis is executive director there. He's been a leader on this forefront for a long time, and he's got a bunch of different wins that they've helped to secure. Cory DeAngelis, welcome back, sir.
Hey, Rich. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So I want to talk about some of these wins for those who may not have heard about them, and I want to reiterate them and take our time with them since our segments in radio are a little bit longer. You're not so pressed for time, and you can really develop this stuff so people understand the importance of what these wins look like. Talk us through it.
Yeah, over the past 3 years alone, we've had 11 states go all in on school choice. And what do I mean by school choice? It's anything that allows the funding meant for educating your child that would normally follow you to the assigned public school. You could take that to a private school, charter school, homeschool. It's anything that allows the money to follow the child. And when I mean going all in on school choice, these 11 states in the past 3 years alone have made them universally available. Every single family, regardless of income, background, zip code, every single family can take their children's state-funded education dollars to the education provider of their choosing. That could be a public school if you want, or a private, charter, or home-based education option. So now over 1 in 5 states have this available. For the most part, in most states across the country, you live in one place, and then you are assigned to a school based on where you live. Just imagine if we did that with groceries or anything else. They'd have no incentive to spend money wisely or to cater to your needs. Your grocery store would probably have empty shelves if they had a captive audience, if you were assigned to them. And imagine if you had to move houses to change your grocery stores. That's how it works with the school system in so many places. But now, again, 11 states, because the teachers unions overplayed their hand by fighting to keep the schools closed as long as possible, starting in 2020 during the COVID era. They held children's education hostage to try to get more and more ransom payments from the taxpayers by saying, well, we can't open the schools until we get more money. So they were fleecing the taxpayers. It backfired because parents got to see a little bit what was happening in the classroom through Zoom learning, or what most people called remote learning, which we should have just called remotely learning because not a lot of learning was going on.
Right.
But look, families got to see that the curriculum wasn't aligned with their values. They saw that the academics weren't up to par. And some conservative parents in particular were upset with left-leaning indoctrination in the classroom. So now we have 11 red states controlled by Republican legislatures that have passed universal school choice. It's a lot of momentum in a short period of time. And as we were talking about on Newsmax together in that segment, is Texas elections went really well for school choice supporters as well. And the school choice opponents, it was an absolute bloodbath. The primary voters, especially on the Republican side, held the incumbents accountable for voting against their own party platform issue of school choice.
That's outstanding news. It really is. It shows you that the people really are paying attention and they care about this stuff. And rural Republicans really stepped up to embrace school choice. The Wall Street Journal's put out a big piece on that. The vote of 28-3 on that bill in Wyoming, which they think might get vetoed. But tell us, what do you think is going to be the outcome in Wyoming? Texas was
that was actually my piece today in print in the Journal. And one of the main arguments that, look, for a long time it was just the lefty arguments that were made against school choice in blue states. Oh, it's going to steal money from the public schools, which is not true. The money's meant for educating the child, not for propping up and protecting an institution. You should follow them to wherever they're going. And if you're doing a good job, and there are a lot of public schools doing a fine job, they shouldn't have to worry about a little competition. But the excuse for Republicans in rural areas who are already endorsed by the teachers unions, their excuse to vote against school choice for a long time was, well, we don't have a lot of options here. We don't have a lot of private schools. The public school is the only option, some of them would say. And the next breath, they look you in the face and they try to tell you with a straight face that, well, this is going to defund my fantastic rural public school. Well, wait, hold up 1 second. If it's so fantastic, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about. But two, more importantly, if it's true that there's no private schools in your area, which to be real, in the long run, if you give parents the money, private providers will pop up over time. Supply is not fixed. We saw this happen in Florida, in the most rural counties over the past couple of decades. As they've expanded school choice in Florida, they have doubled the number of private schools in the most rural counties in the state. But if it's true that there's no other providers, it's the only option is the public school, then you shouldn't be arguing that this will defund your school, because the public schools will keep the same money. They're not going to lose any students. And again, you should have nothing to worry about. But in Texas, they did this in last year after the bill passed the Senate 18-13. In the House, there was enough Republicans joining all the Democrats to vote against school choice that they were able to block it, even though the majority of Republicans voted for it. And then just the other Super Tuesday, 13 of the candidates who were running for re-election who voted against school choice were targeted by my organization, the American Federation for Children's Victory Fund. And it's actually a good name because all we do is win. But just to be real, we took out
like DJ
10.
Khaled.
Right. All we do is win. But we took out 10 of the 13 incumbents that we targeted who voted against school choice. That's a 77% win rate, which is unthinkable when you think about how incumbents win like 95% of the time. It's hard to take out a sitting legislator. They have the name ID, they have a funding advantage most of the time, and so for us to take out or force to runoffs 10 of the 13, that's just a monumental victory. And it just goes to show you that primary voters in Texas, on the Republican side at least, are extremely supportive of school choice. And poll after poll was telling these guys, the incumbents, that they should vote for school choice. They didn't want to listen. You had polls from University of Houston, University of Texas Austin, UT Tyler, Dallas Morning News, Morning Consult. On the primary ballot in 2022, they found 88% of Republican primary voters supported school choice. They didn't want to listen. They said it was not. One guy on the House floor, Glenn Rogers, one of the guys who voted against school choice, he even said that primary ballot proposition was, quote, not valid data. Well, guess what? On Super Tuesday, he lost by 27 points as an incumbent.
Nice work. Cory DeAngelis, stand by. We're going to continue with this conversation straight ahead. I'm going to take a quick pause right here, give out the phone number to anybody who may want to join our conversation, 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ is the number if you want to join our conversation with Cory DeAngelis, Executive Director at the American Federation for Children.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation with the Executive Director of the American Federation for Children, and he's with us now. Cory DeAngelis, you have previously stated that you guys are bringing the heat in 11 different states. I see 9 of them you've pointed out in your piece in the Wall Street Journal. Some of our listeners called in during the break and wanted to know what these states were. So if you don't mind, just give us a little state by state on what you're doing. Because I think a lot of people don't really know that the American Federation for Children is an organization like all others, but you also have this legislative action arm, the Victory Fund, where you're bringing the political fight right to Randy Weingarten and the AFT, and you're being the real alternative for American families. And I think it's important that since we're on in a lot of states, that people know the work that you're doing, and if they want to support you, let them know how they can support you.
Yeah, well, I'll first get into the states that already have universal school choice. It's been pretty recent. It's in the past 3 years, but they're all red states, and they started with West Virginia in 2021, Arizona in 2022, and starting in 2023, Iowa, Utah, Arkansas, Florida, Oklahoma, Indiana, Ohio, North Carolina, and we're just getting started. I mean, if you look at a map and how fast we're populating the states with education freedom, it's one of the bright spots. If you're a liberty advocate of individual rights and being able to choose the best education for your child, there's momentum going on right now, as I cited in the Wall Street Journal piece, in states like Wyoming. They passed an expansive bill that has to go to the governor for signature. There is also, I just mentioned Alabama earlier, is the 11th state that already passed universal school choice this year. We have Tennessee Governor's Bill Lee. He's pushing for universal school choice in Tennessee right now. And in Louisiana, they had the votes for quite a while for universal school choice in the legislature, but they had a Democrat governor until this year. Now we have Jeff Landry, a Republican, who won the race, and he just gave his opening remarks to start the legislative session, and he's calling for universal school choice too. So Louisiana looks like it'll be another state with universal school choice, and just that's a lot of winning already. But there are other states that have more limited forms of school choice, which are also cited in that Wall Street Journal article, including, I mean, I was just kind of responding to the rural argument against school choice. My question in the article, which was rhetorical, was if rural voters don't want school choice, one, why do they elect people who do support school choice? And two, why do rural states, by and large, already have some form of school choice if their voters are so against it? They're actually more favorable towards school choice than voters in other areas. Actually, the oldest private school voucher programs in the country originated in Maine and Vermont in the late 1800s, and they were designed specifically for students in rural areas because they didn't have access to public schools in some places. So the state would give vouchers or scholarships to the families to use at other public schools in other districts or at private religious or non-religious schools, and those programs are still on the books. There are other states like Wisconsin has a pretty sizable amount of school choice already. And you can kind of go down. South Carolina just passed an expansive education savings account program that they're trying to expand to universal soon as well. But you can also you can contribute to my organization's victory fund. Like I said, all we do is win, but we need support and in order to hold these politicians accountable. And that's AFCVF.com. It's AFCVictoryFund.com, AFCVF.com. And that'll help us take out more of the anti-school choice incumbents and also to support legislators who promote education freedom, because look, the battle of ideas is important, but we have to win at the ballot box too. We have to be able to get legislation passed to break up the government school monopoly and to free families from the clutches of Randy Weingarten once and for all.
Folks, Cory DeAngelis, Senior Fellow at the American Federation for Children, Executive Director, and the website again, AFCVF.com. Make sure you go. If you're able to donate, I'd recommend that you do. Worthwhile effort here. Now, Cory, for people who want to follow the work and just stay, up to speed on what you're doing, because, this is fast moving. Not everybody's aware of what's going on. I think there's a lot of people that are in favor of vouchers or voucher type programs. And I know there's even some on the right. I had some folks on this program that were saying that it's way too costly. It's not a good proposition. School choice isn't the way to go, which, to each their own.
No, it saves money. It saves taxpayer money.
I would think.
The government schools spend about $20,000 a year nationwide. It's higher in New York City. It's like $38,000, $40,000. But the voucher amount is only about half of what they spend in the government schools. This is a taxpayer savings.
Right. I can't see why someone would do that, but they made their case, and I disagreed. And I realize there's a lot of people that are interested in this issue but don't know. So how do they follow you? How do they follow the work that you're doing overall?
Yeah, I will say the best way to do so, because I tweet so much, or I post on X now, which is formerly Twitter. You can follow me there. It's at DeAngelis Cory. It's my last name and then my first name. that's the best way to do it. I mean, yeah, you can go to our website, which is federationforchildren.org, but I'm quicker than any press release on with my two thumbs on Twitter. So it's at DeAngelis Cory.
Outstanding. Well, I want to thank you for joining us tonight and bringing us up to speed on what's going on. Keep up the good work. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and Godspeed to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Rich. Hope to see you again soon.
You bet. All right, folks, we continue with your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And a couple of weeks ago on the program, we talked about, or maybe 8 or 9 days ago, we talked about gender-affirming care. Anyway, now there's another study, a California study, that says attempted suicide rates amongst men who had gender surgery was twice as high as it was before the operation. They call it gender-affirming care and tell us that not affirming gender identity is the equivalent of genocide. A living daughter is better than a dead son, is what doctors say to parents as they calculate their next move. And this is according to a piece, by the way, in notthebee.com. And it goes on because there was some controversy on this stuff, right? The writer, Benjamin Ryan, he's a health and science reporter at New York Times, NBC News, and The Guardian. And he wrote about this. And he put that the study finds that the attempted suicide rate amongst transgender women, who are biological men, who received vaginoplasty in California was twice as high during the period after the surgery compared with the period before the surgery. So again, the study shows you get a vagina, you become a woman, and suicide went up. How's that? It's interesting. The investigators analyzed the data on all 868 people who received a vaginoplasty and 357 people who received a phalloplasty in California from 2012 to 2018. There was an average of 2 years of data before and after the surgery. A total of 22% of the vaginoplasty group and 21% of the phalloplasty group had at least one, ER, emergency room or inpatient psych encounter during the study period, whether before or after the surgery. If there was a psych encounter prior to the surgery, 34% of the vaginoplasty group and 27% of the phalloplasty group had a psych encounter after the surgery. Amongst those receiving the vaginoplasty, the rate of suicide attempts was twice as high after the surgery at 3.3% compared with prior to the surgery at 1.5%. The phalloplasty suicide attempt rate was similar to the general population, while the vaginoplasty group was more than twice as high as the general population. And this goes on, and I'll share this on social media a little bit later during one of the breaks. But what I find interesting here is this is devastating to a biological man to invert their genitalia, to turn it into a vagina, what they call a vaginoplasty, and then they can't bring it back. And that's tough. And that's why they're killing themselves. All right, folks, Rich Valdez, I'm here with you till 1 a.m., keeping you company. Hour number 2 coming right up. Don't move a muscle.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of our program, Tuesday night. And if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Big day on Capitol Hill with the testimony of Special Counsel Robert Hur. Special Counsel Hur was in the hot seat for about 6 hours, getting grilled by the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Jordan, as well as Matt Gaetz and so many others, Adam Schiff, amongst Jerry Nadler, who were just going at Mr. Hur, trying to get information, oversight information and clarification on his report. And I got to tell you, it was a very, very robust 6 hours. There was a lot going on in that hearing today, and we brought you some of that. We'll be tapping into that again at the bottom of this hour with former chief of the criminal division of the Department of Justice, Doug Burns, frequent expert on this show. And I want to talk about how we get into those problems to begin with, right? Some of the issues that we face as a society, something I talked about a little earlier when I was recording my podcast, This is America with Rich Valdez. Make sure you subscribe to that if you're interested in podcasts. You know, this program is a 3-hour nightly radio show reaching millions of people in hundreds of stations. But the podcast is more intimate. It's 45 minutes or less on some different topics. We talk about, you know, all sorts of things, including like hip-hop and reggaeton and all sorts of music that I'm into. And it's a different type of conversation. But if you're into that, I hope that you subscribe to it, and I'd love to have you join that conversation. But something I talked about today was the brawls that are breaking out with spring break. Right? You've got these spring breakers that are all over the place, and it's irrespective of race and where you come from. Right? I think just people get drunk and they like to fight. And I think when you've abandoned morality, and you don't have that centrality that brings morality to the forefront of one's life, which for many people is their faith, how they were brought up, it becomes a problem, right? When you're devoid of this morality, we have a problem, Houston. And we see it over and over because it's beyond the drunken bar fight in many cases. Now you've got people all over the place, just getting into these very violent altercations. We saw 2 teenage girls fighting. The girl starts smashing her head into the sidewalk until she stops moving. First she convulses, and then she's just lifeless. She's not dead. She's in critical condition, but it's absolutely horrific. It's brutal. And this brutality is the result of godlessness, in my opinion, churches that no longer focus on holiness, and so many of us embracing the culture around us instead of embracing the teachings that we should have been learning in Sunday school all these years. But what if you're not? What if you're not a believer? What if you're not somebody that pertains to a faith group or one of the faith traditions? Well, then we have to ask ourselves these questions about what type of universal truths and morality do we actually embrace? And I want to have a conversation about that because I feel like it's a conversation that we need to have every so often. Because we lose track, right? And it seems like America's losing its faith, how the amount of non-religious Americans is now near 30% in the latest survey. And some people think religion's too politicized. Some people just think people are just losing their faith overall. But Americans are continually identifying as none when it comes to religion, meaning they're atheists, agnostics, nothing in particular. This new study from the Pew Research Center found that about 28% of adults in the United States are religiously unaffiliated. And that's according to the National Public Opinion Reference Survey that they conduct annually. And it's the second largest religious group in the survey, which is following Protestants, right? Which are Catholics, right? So you've got 20% people identifying as Catholics, 40% are identifying as Protestants, and this is, and then you've got none. And this is where the problem comes in, right? And I think there's a correlation. Now, of course, you'll always find somebody on the left that will be able to push back and say something like, listen, when you got rid of religion in so many European countries, that's when it became peaceful, right? The places with no religion, the more secular the place is, the safer it is. I tend to not believe that just because I have eyes and I see what's going on. But I want to bring in an expert on this, somebody who's out there on a daily basis, man of the cloth, Pastor Mike Signorelli, lead pastor and the founder of V1 Church in New York City. Pastor Mike, welcome back, sir.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's good to be back, everybody.
You bet. So let's talk about this, because I know that you're out there. You're not just, a pulpit preacher on the weekends. I know you're out there in the world globally, doing your thing, pressing the flesh, engaging with the culture. What is it that you're finding when you're actually out there, Pastor Mike?
Yeah, as you said, I'm out there and I'm finding hopelessness. People are lost. And here's the problem. At first it sounds really appealing to think about I'm in control of my own life, because that feels like freedom, until you actually try to make all your own decisions. And you things get worse and worse and worse, which leads to despair. To me, it's not random that we are also seeing a disproportionate number of people choosing to end their lives as well. So you have an epidemic right now, and I believe it's all connected to godlessness. People don't believe that they were born for a purpose. They don't believe that they were created by a creator. And as a result of that, you live your life saying, well, I'm in charge. Well, listen, that's a very abysmal existence, if you ask me. The scriptures say, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. I think one of the biggest lies that we were sold was we create our own path. That's too big of a burden for us to bear. Identity is not created, it's received. And so I really believe when you go back to God, you're saying, okay, I want to receive my identity. Who do you say I am? What do you say I do? And what we're seeing, quite frankly, here in America is false freedom, because we're saying, well, I can make my own future. Well, how's that working out for you? You're anxiety-ridden, medication-filled, and you're divorced. You don't want to live your life. It's not working for us. And here's the good news, though. In the midst of all this, many people are saying there has to be something else. Maybe God does exist. You have Eugene Peterson, who's a leading intellectual. You have, even Joe Rogan is talking about Jesus Christ now. And so the conversation is changing, because what happens when people get to the end of themselves is they either say, maybe the end is the end, or maybe the end is a new beginning.
Outstanding. Well put, Pastor Mike Signorelli. And I agree with you. I think, I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, and I saw this very, very popular psychologist. Her name is Sadia Khan. And she, the soundbite that I saw, she was saying, we're so focused on self-help and self-renewal and self-actualization, self-discovery, that there's so much of an emphasis on self that we're losing our ability to connect with people in a meaningful way. And again, yeah. I don't think she's a Christian. I think just from her position as a clinical psychologist, she's finding that people aren't plugged into people anymore the way they once were. And, some of this is the result of COVID. I think some of it may be by design. For others, there's, I think, an increased sentiment from people that are like, I don't like people. I'd rather not. I don't want to be around anybody. There's just, people are taking on that attitude that much more. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, though, that, when we put all this on ourselves, and I know I'm guilty as sin when it comes to trying to control the outcomes of my life. There's one thing to set goals, and it's another thing to really try and control your own outcome. Yeah. And you can try, but it doesn't really happen, right? There's a million things that could happen. And I think that's the part where if you get too upset that you didn't achieve the goal in the time frame that you had or whatever and whatnot, you start to really think that you might be able to pull off these things, and losing sight of the fact of who's really in charge. And clearly, at least according to my faith, it's not me. You know, I'm here along for a ride. And I think that's the refreshing part of believing in Jesus, believing in God. Outside of that, I think people do get stuck and caught up in these situations. So when we come back, I want you to share with the listeners what advice you give to people, whether they're Christians or not, as to how to maybe let go of some of this control that we try desperately to hold on to for our own lives. Because ultimately, I think it leads to these people that are angry and they're getting drunk and they're bashing people's heads in and jumping on top of police cars and creating problems that don't necessarily have to occur when they're out in the world. Folks, we're on with Pastor Mike Signorelli. He's the founder of V1 Church, New York City. Coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. Somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation with Pastor Mike Signorelli. And Pastor Mike, we were leaving off with your thoughts on how you counsel folks. I mean, that's obviously, you know, when you're the pastor of anything, everybody thinks you have all the answers. And, you know, it's kind of your job. You better have some of them. And when people come to you and they say, you know, how do I let go? How do I try to not obsess and control over the self and let go and let God? How do you make it happen?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And by the way, I don't have all the answers, but I encourage our people, let's find the answer together. And here's the thing, over all the years of counseling people and, you know, I've had quite a few people cry on my shoulder asking that. Here's what it comes down to. And I'm going to give a biblical answer, but there's somebody listening right now that this is really going to help. The secret is your weakness. There's a scripture that says, when I am weak, then I am strong. Here's the problem. We live our entire lives being trained on how to conceal our weakness, how to hide our weakness, how to turn our weakness into a strength. But there's something different when you come to God. You reveal it and you say, you know what, God, I can't do it. Let me tell you, I come from multiple generations of divorce, poverty, all kinds of madness. And if you saw my family tree, is pretty dysfunctional. But the one thing is that I remember everything changed in my own marriage when I finally said, God, I don't have what it takes. I can't be a good husband. And that was the very moment he said, okay, now you're qualified for a miracle. Now I can start to teach you. There's something about this level of humility. And this is why I think we have so much anxiety nowadays. It's a lot of it is perfectionism. Oh, I didn't eat the right thing. I didn't work out enough. You know, it's like we live in this constant like paralysis because of perfection. And so there's something liberating. This is, you know, especially the Christian faith, because obviously I'm a pastor. There's something liberating when you say, oh, I get it. I'm just like Peter. I'm just like Moses. I'm just like Elijah. They were all screwed up. But the one thing they did different than everybody else was they said, I'm willing to admit it. Once they did that, they qualified themselves for the supernatural. So I think the first step, and even when you talk to people in addiction, the first step is admitting it. So there's something about your weakness that is the secret. And so I always tell people, start there. Admit you can't do it. Because, you know, there's this whole movement, and you talked about it earlier. There's this whole movement of, you know, you're enough. And they try to encourage, you're enough as a mom. You're not enough. See, this is why when we got away from God, society started to unravel. Because when you believe the lie, if you even do believe you're enough for your kids, then what do you do when they still make mistakes? What do you do when they still rebel? You know, when we don't leave any room for God, what we're actually doing is we're breaking our own selves down, and then we're actually creating a situation where we built ourselves up to be everything, which in turn will eventually make us feel like nothing. So I know that sounds kind of crazy to say it out loud, but there's such a reliance on God where I say, you know what, when I'm not enough for my kids, you know, they have an earthly father, Mike Signorelli, but they also have a heavenly father. And you're going to fill the gaps in where I fail, because I had a bad dad, but my girls have a good dad, but I'm not a perfect dad. He's a perfect dad. And when you start talking like that, even to some of your listeners, they might be like, this sounds crazy. I've never heard anything like that. Yeah, but this will bring peace. And I think that what we're experiencing in society is people are in total nihilism and despair because they're saying, you know what, I finally figured it out. I'm not enough. And then that leads to, like you said, alcoholism, drug abuse, violence. We're seeing it in New York City. And I do truly believe that the answer is God. And that's why I think this conversation is so important.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I think that there may be debate amongst some, you know, who's the right God, which God, why is your God better than mine? And that those theological differences and debates will always abound. But I think ultimately the bottom line is you've got to be anchored to whatever it is that you're anchored to, and it can't be just you and your own wherewithal, because like you said, everybody runs thin, and you've got to get with that higher power. Now let me see. With a minute and a half to go, I want to go to Jim, Marshall, North Carolina, listening on KDKA. Jim, make it very quickly. You're on with Pastor Mike.
Oh, thanks for taking my call, Mr. Pastor Mike there and Mr. Valdez.
Yes, sir.
I've just recently returned back to my faith in Jesus and God. Quit smoking pot and quit using alcohol. The experience has been so amazing. I got friends I've been witness to left and right, but I just went on Facebook tonight, not Facebook, but YouTube, and found a friend I hadn't seen in forever, and I haven't talked to her still, but I can see these people on drugs and being clean and straight. What it makes me realize, but they seem to be in very bad shape.
Well, Jim, congratulations. It doesn't sound like it's an easy task. Pastor Mike.
Yeah, listen, I want to encourage you. I believe in divine appointments, and we were supposed to be connected tonight because I want to tell you, keep going. And we overcome by the word of our testimony. So keep on telling that testimony.
Amen to that. Appreciate that. And Michael in Clarence, Montana, I don't think we're going to have enough time to get to you. The music is about to kick in, but if you hang on, I'll try and get to you in the upcoming call segment. Pastor Mike Signorelli, let everybody know how they can learn a little bit more about your ministry, the work that you're doing, and how they can follow you.
Yeah, guys, go to MikeSignorelli.com, and everything's there. I'd love to connect with you. MikeSignorelli.com.
Godspeed to you, Pastor. I appreciate it. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. And, folks, we are coming back with more discussion on the Hur testimony from earlier today. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And did the White House get the report before the report was made public?
We did provide a draft of the report to the White House counsel's office and members of the president's personal counsel team for their review.
No, I understand. And did the White House then, once they got the report before it went public, did the White House try to weigh in with your investigation on elements of that report and, frankly, get the report changed?
They did request certain edits and changes to the draft report.
That is special counsel Robert Hur giving his testimony on Capitol Hill today to the House Judiciary Committee. 6 hours of testimony. We have lots of clips. You've heard a lot in the first hour. We have more to come now, and we're going to have some analysis with the former chief of the criminal division at the Department of Justice, chief of the New York office, Doug Burns. He's also a defense attorney with 38 years of experience, a frequent guest on our program, understands this process like few others do. Doug Burns, welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Now, did today's testimony surprise you? Was it what you expected? Was there any bombshells?
No. First of all, there's two ways to look at it. One is just generically these type of hearings, and then two is the specific substance. The reason I break that down is I don't want the listeners, your audience, to get the wrong idea when I say it didn't surprise me at all, because these hearings with these 5 minutes, per member are just laughable and comical. Each one launches into these political speeches, and it's totally embarrassing. That's one way to look at it. On the substance, did it surprise me? It surprised me in a good way, because there are a number of things that came out that were really pretty potent and pretty fatal. For example, Matt Gaetz, when he just calmly asked Robert Hur, or he read to him an excerpt from the actual transcript, and Biden was asked, did you ever, do a particular thing? And he goes, absolutely not. I never did. And he said to her, that wasn't true, was it? And Hur kind of watered it down. He goes, it was inconsistent. As I said on the air today, I said, no, he lied. So stop with, softening it up. And he caught him in 2 lies. So that was a little bit surprising to me. It was also surprising to me.
But before we move on, I want to play that just so the audience has the benefit of hearing what you were just talking about. Listen to this.
February 8th, the White House. Question, Mr. President, why did you share classified information with your ghostwriter? The President, I did not share classified information. I did not share it. I guarantee I did not. That's not true, is it, Mr. Hur?
That is inconsistent with the findings based on the evidence in my report.
Yes, it's a lie. It's just what regular people would say, right? Yeah, all right. So the next one. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. That wasn't true either, was it?
That was inconsistent with the findings of our investigation.
Another lie, people might say, right? Because what you put in your report was among the places Mr. Biden's lawyers found classified documents in the garage was a damaged open box.
A damaged open box. And again, that was inconsistent with the truth. Now, when you hear that, I mean, I find this, again, I read this when the report was originally released, but I think it's crazy that, A, he had the documents, and B, he was so flippant with them.
But it goes right into the breathtaking double standards, disingenuousness, and I'm on a roll, because here's the thing. When it's in one direction, they're like, Trump lied and this and that. And then in the other direction, you just heard crystal clear proof of 2 overt lies, yet the baked in narrative. And if you think about it, Rich, you really got to almost take your hat off for their ability to bake in these narratives. I mean, I went in a media segment through Europe this afternoon, and they had a guy from Georgia who's, a liberal type pundit, and I'm the conservative on this thing, and he goes right into the baked-in narrative. The difference between the 2 cases is that Biden cooperated. So I'd like to explain something to your audience, and that is, and they've heard other experts say this, but this narrative is essentially ridiculous, because if 2 people, we're just going to the classroom for a second, law school classroom. If 2 people commit an offense, I don't care what offense you're talking about, bank robbery or this offense, classified documents, okay, if each one of them was in possession of classified documents that they weren't supposed to be in possession of, they've each violated the law in this hypothetical. With Trump, obviously you have the footnotes about his authority as president to declassify. Put that to the side. Just go with my classroom hypothetical. If 2 individuals commit this offense, one is cooperative and one isn't, that's largely irrelevant. Because if 2 people rob a bank, for example, Doug Burns goes in the bank walks out with $1,000. He robbed it. Rich Valdez goes in the bank, robs it, and walks out with $1,000. The police approach both of them. Doug is belligerent and nasty and uncooperative. Rich is completely and totally forthcoming and cooperative. Doesn't matter. We both committed the same offense, okay? And it's just and it's just amazing to me and what I said today, which I'm glad I finally got this point out, because I say it to my wife all the time. I say, Joanne, people wouldn't go on the media and start bloviating and pontificating about brain surgery, right, when they know nothing about it. Yet in law, for some reason, people just jump right in over the ski tips, pontificating. And the point is, law is a discipline. It is a science. Seriously. I trained for it for years and years. I've practiced it for 38 years. And so today, for example, I'll give you some of my greatest hits. One representative in the House says, so there was no evidence at all that he did anything wrong. That was just flat out idiotic.
Are you talking about Pramila Jayapal?
There you go.
All right.
Thank you.
I want to play that
really
so that you can hear it and the audience can hear it. I'm going to play it. I guess we have time to play it now. Listen to this.
So this lengthy, expensive, and independent investigation resulted in a complete exoneration of President Joe Biden. For every document you discussed in your report, you found insufficient evidence that the president violated any laws about possession or retention of classified materials. The primary law that you analyzed for potential prosecution was part of the Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. 793E, which criminalizes willful retention or disclosure of national defense information. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, that is one statute that we analyzed. I need to go back and make sure that I take note of a word that you used, exoneration. That is not a word that
I'm going to continue with my questions. I'm going to continue with my questions. I know that the term
I ultimately reached whether sufficient evidence existed such that the likely outcome
you exonerated
a conviction.
I know that the term willful retention has a Mr. Hur, it's my time. Thank you.
You exonerated him. I did not exonerate him. Okay, so you exonerated him.
That is so embarrassing, Rich, okay? And disgraceful, seriously, not to get up on a soapbox. But the point is, Law 101, like the first week in law school, the point is you have factual guilt. That's whether a person, factually did something. Then you have the side issue of can it be proven in a courtroom, and if it can't, then you're not legally guilty, but it doesn't mean you're not factually guilty. And then here, in this instance, Hur essentially says he's factually guilty, okay? He could be legally guilty because it could be proven in a court, but at the end of the day, he's elderly and this and that and the other thing, which are defense attorney roles. You've heard other experts say that, surprisingly. And, I think Robert Hur comported himself well, and he's obviously a brilliant man, and he went to Stanford Law, and he clerked for Chief Justice Rehnquist. But what he did here, I think, was very much wide of the mark. But the message I'm trying to get across is that everybody sees it as a Rorschach test. One side sees it one way, one the other, and then they just start pontificating just ignorantly about law. And the fact of the matter is that there is absolutely no question, let's just all be clear, that Joe Biden was in possession of classified materials in violation of that statute. That's point one. Point two, all of this nonsense about this week and what's his cognition this week. No, he had this stuff for 20 and 30 years, Rich, okay? And what really happened, and I love the movie Beverly Hills Cop. I don't know if you remember it, but in that movie, they said, Foley and we were in a strip club, and he tells this wild tale. And the lieutenant Bogomil goes, is this what really happened? And Taggart hangs his head. He goes, no. And Bogomil says, would somebody like to tell me what really happened? So let me tell your listeners what really happened in this case. What happened in this case is that once upon a time, every single president, seriously, would retain all kinds of classified documents. Okay? Nobody got in trouble for it. A lot of it had to do with writing memoirs, okay? This president, that president, and the other one. When Donald Trump came along, exactly, and when Donald Trump came along, all of a sudden, the anger reached such a fever pitch that for the first time in history, we had a situation where he was going to be charged with a crime over this, and Joe Biden panicked, knowing that he had classified documents in violation of law for 30 years, okay? And all of a sudden, He's Mr. Cooperation, and here you go, and this is what I found, and I had no idea it was there. And it's all a bunch of hogwash, and he's just as guilty, if not guiltier, than Trump, okay? And lastly, Matt Gaetz said today, and I agree with him, actually, and Professor Dershowitz has said this, I wouldn't charge anybody with this in either political direction. However, if you're going to charge Trump, are you kidding me? Then you must charge Biden, because what's good for the goose has to be good for the gander, and we have to have equal application of law.
Excellent point. We'll pause right there. We're coming right back with Doug Burns, our guest. He's a former chief of criminal for the Department of Justice, and he's been a defense attorney for 38 years, legal expert, frequently with us, and a friend of the program. Doug Burns, stick with me, folks. We're coming right back. Plus the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
Suggested that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that he did not have documents called for by the grand jury's subpoena. You didn't find anything like that with respect to Mr. Biden, did you?
Congressman, I do not have the Trump indictment in front of me, but I need to address something that you said in your prior question. What you are suggesting is that I needed to provide a different version of my report that would be fit for public release. That is nowhere in the rules. I was to prepare a confidential report that was comprehensive and thorough of an
What is in the rules, Mr. Hur, what is in the rules is you don't gratuitously do things to prejudice the subject of an investigation when you're declining to prosecute. You don't gratuitously add language that you know will be useful in a political campaign. You were not born yesterday. You understood exactly what you were doing. It was a choice. You certainly didn't have to include that language. You could have said vis-a-vis the documents that were found at the university, the president did not recall. There is nothing more common. You know this. I know this. There is nothing more common with a witness of any age when asked about events that are years old to say, I do not recall. Indeed, they're instructed by their attorney to do that if they have any question about it. You understood that. You made a choice. That was a political choice. It was the wrong choice. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona, did special counsel wish to respond to that final question?
Yes, Congressman, what you are suggesting is that I shape, sanitize, omit portions of my reasoning and explanation to the Attorney General for political reasons.
No, I suggest that you not shape your report for political reasons, which is what you did.
That did not happen, Congressman. That did not happen.
Doug Burns, that is Congressman Adam Schiff for Brains, and Mr. Hur, the special counsel, and Robert Hur, forgive me. And is there any semblance of truth in what you heard Adam Schiff say, in your opinion?
Adam Schiff and Jamie Raskin both graduated from Harvard Law School. That's extremely important because the two of them engage in unbelievably disingenuous, reckless, and indeed very often completely false information. Adam Schiff was driving a ridiculous narrative, and when he gets the answer that shuts him down, he just soldiers on. The sad part is he fools a lot of people. I'm not being arrogant. He's not fooling me, obviously. And the point is, the guy said that he really wasn't aware of the extent to which at all his report was going to be edited, okay? And he wasn't aware at all how much was or wasn't going to be released. That's critically important to debunk Schiff's idiotic, ridiculous, false narrative, which is that you intentionally created this narrative. But let me throw in an editorial. Everybody loved Bob Mueller. He was the greatest thing since the invention of the wheel until he came out with a report that said there was no collusion whatsoever. They melted down hysterically, and then they hated him. So with Hur, they love him. He's wonderful, brilliant, and amazing. When he concludes that Joe Biden, and I'm smiling and literally looking in a mirror, Joe Biden should not be charged with a crime. He's wonderful. He's the greatest thing since Swiss cheese was invented. And then he says, but the guy's a doddering old fool who can't remember what he had for damn breakfast, and then they absolutely hate and detest him. So in the sense of this hearing, it's an amazing dynamic because they kind of have to work both sides of the room. But back to your question, which I'm not dodging, Adam Schiff, are you kidding me? That guy is the most disingenuous guy, one of the most disingenuous guys I've ever seen in my life. Jamie Raskin is unbelievable. What they did with the Colorado thing was just breathtaking. And real quick, you had J. Michael Ludwig, a former federal judge who's conservative, so the liberal media just lapped him up like manna from heaven. And Mike Ludwig completely embarrassed himself, saying the Colorado decision was correct. Lawrence Tribe, he's a constitutional
Hold on
law
to that
professor.
one, because I want to get to Colorado. I got to take a pause here, and I want your thoughts on this. Folks, we're on with Doug Burns, former federal prosecutor, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, we're coming right back with Doug Burns, and we left off with his commentary on the Colorado decision. We talked about Judge Ludwig, and you were going into Lawrence Tribe. Doug Burns.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, Lawrence Tribe was a professor of constitutional law at Harvard Law School for 50 years. He may be emeritus or retired now. Wrote a textbook, Tribe, constitutional law textbook. You mean to tell me he doesn't know that Section 5 of the 14th Amendment says that Congress shall enforce it, not the states? So the problem is, and what burns me up more than anything, Rich, is there's no accountability from news cycle to news cycle. So Lawrence Tribe goes on liberal cable, and he pontificates that the Colorado decision is correct, and it's clear that Trump must be kicked off the ballot. It's completely wrong, and he loses 9-0. Now, the whole narrative, this Supreme Court, now I'm on a roll. So follow me. This Supreme Court is only what it is. It's a disgrace because of the three Trump appointees. Oh, really? Well, this was 9-0.
Right.
Okay. And all three or four members of the liberal wing of the court. Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Right. I mean, they all did the right thing. Kudos to them. I'm serious. They interpreted a section 5, which says that Congress shall enforce it. But I want to leave you off with the great hysterical hypocrisy point. With abortion, they say, the liberals, you can't leave that to the states. That's outrageous. But on this Colorado thing, no, Rich, the states have to do this.
Right.
So think about the hypocrisy of that. And the point is, in all seriousness, if they can't get it in one place, in other words, they couldn't get it in Congress. They know that. And they know that the 14th Amendment says that Congress has to enforce it. So they do this artificial fake thing with the states doing it. They get Lawrence Tribe and J. Michael Ludwig, a conservative retired appeals judge, and they're off to the races. Crazy.
Off to the races. Doug Burns, thank you, sir. What a law school lesson that was. Folks, follow Doug Burns at Doug Burns Law on Twitter. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I thank you for staying up late with us. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more on Open Phone America. I am Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. If you're just joining us, welcome. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And we're going to be getting to your calls, lots of calls this hour. And I want to get a little recap on what we've been talking about. We talked about some big school choice victories earlier. And it's great to see that school choice is winning. I mean, for years, people have been fighting, but this has not been the area where we won. And we're winning. And it's great to see that because children are winning. And we also had some really, really robust conversation around all of the testimony today from Robert Hur, special counsel, on Capitol Hill at the House Judiciary's Committee's hearing on this, and it was eye-opening. Just a lot to discuss, and we had a very, very really good conversation about that as well. And of course, there's the news of the day. Lots of news of the day that we're going to get to, and your phone calls. One of the things I want to start with today is a little bit of a throwback, a little bit of a flashback to yesteryear, and of course, I'm talking about something that happened a long time ago. Back in 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt made his first fireside chat. That would have been yesterday. This is a big anniversary of the fireside chat. How many? 91 years ago today, FDR did his famous fireside chat. And, if I ever strike it big, I want to have a fireside chat show. I really do. I think that'd be so cool. Maybe we could do it just on Sundays. I think that would be fun. But anyway, we have a clip of one of the infamous fireside chats. Listen to this.
My friends, I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking. To talk with the comparatively few who understand the mechanics of banking, but more particularly with the overwhelming majority of you who use banks for the making of deposits and the drawing of checks. I want to tell you what has been done in the last few days and why it was done and what the next steps are going to be. I recognize that the many proclamations from state capitals and from Washington, the legislation, the Treasury regulations, and so forth, couched for the most part in banking and legal terms, ought to be explained for the benefit of the average citizen.
I think we're still talking about that, right? Truth in lending. Anyway, while I'm not a huge fan of FDR, I can say that I am a big fan of fireside chats and an even bigger fan of radio. You guys know I'm a radio nerd. I love this stuff. Somebody was asking me the other day, they're like, how come we don't do more TV? And not that I'm turning down TV opportunities, I'm not. But I just love radio. Something that really activates the mind's eye, right? The theater of the mind that comes alive on radio that just doesn't exist on television. But again, on television, you're able to create a different type of connection. And so it's not to say that one is better than the other, just they're different. And this is one that this medium is one that I love. But yeah, 91 years ago today or yesterday, I should say, was the first fireside chat. And that clip was from that first fireside chat. And I want to get to some of your calls because I know there's plenty to discuss, but I want to just give you a rundown of some of the stories that have come across my desk today from our crack squad of producers. Listen to this. There's a police shortage in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So if you're in KDKA, we might talk about that in a little bit. Police shortage in Pittsburgh. They're saying they may have no cops from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. If I read that right, that's crazy. Then we've got Biden and Trump both securing their party's nomination. That happened this evening. Congressman Ken Buck, who had been bucking the Republicans very famously last year, he's announced he's leaving Congress at the end of the month. One less Republican. Will we have a majority? Ay bendito. I don't know. We'll have a 2-person majority. It gets thinner and thinner. Then we've got Border Patrol in Florida are on high alert because of all the unrest in Haiti. And let's see, there was another one. You got rats that have invaded a marijuana store and they're getting stoned. I'm sorry, police headquarters, the evidence locker, and they're getting stoned on the evidence locker. You got the rats are running around high. You can't make that up. Missing 12-year-old found locked inside of a Target. Wow. Thank God they're okay. Then somebody killed somebody, allegedly, and posted the video on their own Facebook and then said, no, that was just AI. Speaking of AI, I posted a photo of myself generated by AI. And let me tell you, what a handsome dude this AI Richie V is. Really, 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 really nice. Like bluish silver shark skin suit. Probably took about 15 pounds off of me. Made me about an inch taller. I was like, man, this AI is fantastic. I love it. Let me see what else. LaGuardia Airport, New York City, is one of the best airports in the U.S., according to a survey that's being reported in thehill.com. And this is another one. I'm throwing a lot at you, but there's a lot out there today. The survey finds 61% of renters worry that they'll never be able to afford a home. That's probably true. Taco Bell is closing their dining rooms in Oakland, California. Why? You guessed it, crime. And let's see. There was a couple more here. There was one less. Here's funny. 12. Let's see, 12. Man found guilty of murder after Googling how to kill your ex's fiancé. Apparently, this guy went online and searched, can I shoot somebody in X, Y, and Z state if they try to rob me? And he then went and shot his ex's new boyfriend, who she's going to marry. He kills the guy, and now he's in jail. Why? Por pendejo. The guy's an idiot. Who does that? Anyway, those are just some of the stories that we're working on. We'll work through them as we continue. Also want to talk about the story out of Houston yesterday. I missed it. I'm going to get to that for our friends in Houston on AM 920, but Patriot Talk. But I do have some calls that I want to get to, and a few of you have been on hold for a little bit. So let us go to Mike, Brunswick, Maine, WLOB. Mike, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, what did you mean that when you make it big?
Well, I mean, when I can afford to do whatever projects I want. So, I mean, yeah, now, thank God, great big radio show. I appreciate that. But I'm talking about when you get to, your pick of the litter. Right now, I still have to show up to work every day. I think when you make it big, you don't have to show up to work. You show up, when you feel like it. And maybe that'll happen one day. I don't know. Until then, I'm very happy.
I was listening to Doug earlier. Guy's great.
Yeah.
And, let me tell you, I'm getting an old friend of Jimbo Hannit's from Vietnam.
Nice.
Yeah,
well, thank you for your service.
Yeah, no problem. Jim served in Army Intel. So him and I used to go back and forth a lot off the air. And he must be rolling his grade to watch what's going on right now. I got to tell you, look, when I've held clearances, probably 9 of them over the years, between DOD, Foggy Bottom, and Langley. And I got to tell you, I can't even begin to tell you how many violations of the Espionage Act that went on during this. But, the worst part to this is, the country is watching the top of the chain of command who is corrupt. He's corrupt. His son's corrupt. We watched the corruptions with the Clintons. Now take a good look at what's happening in Haiti, okay?
Oh, my God. What a disaster.
Yeah. But look, in 2010, after the earthquake, we handed Bill Clinton $13 billion to get that place straight. The money never went anywhere.
No. In fact, they did a power grab after that, and all the mining rights to any of their precious metals or anything else that they mined for apparently belonged to the brother, Mr. Rodham, and he's got the official lease on that, the kind of way China does it with cobalt and whatnot in many places. The Clintons have now claimed the mining rights to a good portion of where you can mine in Haiti. And fascinating. Bill is out there doing his fundraising, saying he's going to fix things. Hillary is in the State Department, and it just, nobody cares about anything. And the Haitians know about it, and they're vocal about it, and they say things all the time, and they make an excellent case. But you've got warlords and cannibals that are running around killing each other in Haiti. I mean, it's an absolute disaster, Mike, and it's shocking. And all I could say is, Haiti is a legitimate third world country. It's probably the closest third world country to us besides Nicaragua, and in our hemisphere. And scary. It's just scary to see that it was bad and it's getting worse, Mike.
Well, Sunday night they did the evacuation. I know for a fact they did a night evacuation down at the embassy Sunday night to evac the people from the State Department out of there, and they reinforced the embassy with more Marines. So let me tell you something. This is going to get really, really serious before it's over. They not only took over the police stations, basically what they did was they took over the biggest port. And next to the two ports were the two biggest prisons in Haiti. They went in and released thousands and thousands of prisoners. And these guys are not nice guys. So
bad hombres.
Trouble. Yeah, bad. It's Donald would say bad.
Man. Well, listen, it sounds like they're going to make their way here eventually, and somebody's going to hand them a backpack, a cell phone, a debit card, a bunch of money, and, the express route to doing everything that the rest of us can't do. And that's part of what has to stop. And I think, honestly, that's the demise of the modern-day Democrat Party, is really just turning their backs on Americans, turning their backs on what they once believed in, turning their backs on even things that even Slick Willie, Bill Clinton, and Obama even upheld, even if it were just in rhetoric. They at least said the right thing about keeping the borders secure, something that Biden he's the first that I've seen to ever go this crazy with it. Mike, I could talk to you all night, but I got to take a pause right here. I appreciate you again. Thanks for your service. Thanks for the call and for your kind words. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We're going to hear calls. Let's see, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I'm going to go to Frank, Cumberland, Maryland, WCBC. Frank, go ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Mike's call about the situation in Haiti is a very hard call to follow because we're going from cannibalism to civility. My call is about civility. Now, ordinarily, you're great, and I think you're better than Bohannon was in treating your callers. But I think when you say Adam Schiff for brains, that's kind of like Billingsgate. It's gutter snipe stuff. And RTK and the standards there with Nancy Pelosi tearing up President Trump's State of the Union message in Congress. That was a disgrace. And
I agree with
we're starting
that.
to go downhill as far as civility is concerned. And recently, another big talk show host called the President of the United States a bastard. Now, that's going too far. And in your case, I wanted to, I'm not complaining, but would you like to apologize to Adam Schiff?
No, I would love to debate him and invite him on the show. I mean, I appreciate your sensibility towards civility. However, I pride myself on being open to having discussion with the other side. I don't necessarily wear civility as a badge of honor. I think sometimes you got to get gutter and have a street fight, and I'm okay with that. However, Shift for Brains, I think, is one of those things where it's, it's part of the shtick of being in radio. I'm not an elected official. If I was, maybe I wouldn't. That's why I always say, I love that Trump was kind of like our first talk radio president, right? If anybody could be a president and a talk radio person at the same time, where you get to make nicknames and have a good time on the air, he did it in real life and came up with funny names for Schiff himself. So, no apology from me for calling him Schiff for Brains. But I will say this. I'll clarify and say I think Adam Schiff is an evil genius. I don't think he's stupid. Even Joe El Baboso Biden, I don't think he's really that baboso, even though the report that has been released by Mr. Hur indicates that he is, in fact, somewhat baboso, right? Which in Spanish means kind of like a bumbling idiot. We know that he's a doting old man at times, but I think there's a political cunningness, I'm going to go with, to Biden that he doesn't lose. He's also willing to have that street fight. And I think we can lose sight of how shrewd he can be at times because of our focus on him falling up the stairs or doing things that, just fit the narrative of the, Weekend at Bernie's type of Joe Biden. But the reality is, I've seen in his younger days, I've seen him sweep the floor with Paul Ryan in the vice presidential debate. I've seen him even be formidable in a couple of rounds against Trump in 2020. And that's because you don't lose some of that muscle memory. And I learned that from my dad. I look at my dad, and my dad was a real tough guy in his youth and maintained a really solid physique most of his life up until the end. He did become frail and skinny, but for the most part, my dad was 67, 69, 70, maybe even to 72 in excellent shape. And my point is, even after that, he maintained that muscle memory in his mind where he was still that young, tough guy, even though he was an older guy. So, that's my take there. I do, like I said, though, I applaud and appreciate your call for civility. And I tend to violate those norms. And it's probably something I'll always do in radio. Maybe I'll mature in some years, but I'm definitely not there yet. Thank you for your kind words, Frank. I appreciate your listenership and your call. And we're going to get to Phil in Pittsburgh straight after this. And we got Sarah and Alex and others. Don't go anywhere, folks. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night.
Residents of the city will see a major change in the way police respond. They will no longer respond to calls that aren't considered in-progress emergency. That means calls like criminal mischief, theft, harassment, and most burglary alarms will all be handled by an enhanced telephone reporting unit. That means residents will file a police report over the phone. Officers will not respond unless it's an emergency. Also, between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., there will be no officers at any of the 6 stations throughout the city. Call boxes boxes that link directly to 911 have been installed for people to use in case of an emergency. And during the overnight shift, there will be as few as 20 officers to cover the entire city. The chief said the data supports that.
Yes, it's enough to cover the entire city in those hours when we have 8% of the time people are calling. I'm confident in the decisions that we make that it impacts this bureau and the city in a much better way than we have in the past.
Now, the chief also acknowledging that some of these changes are due to staffing shortages. He's down to 740 officers, well below the 850 they would like to have.
Okay, so that is, again, the chief of police in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and all of our friends on KDKA. If you want to weigh in on this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But how do you go out there and tell every last criminal, hey, listen, folks, we're going to be on vacation. If you want to rob our home, just make sure you do it when we're away. We're not going to have any cops between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. So if we're only going to have a handful of cops, then this is the time for you to do what you got to do. Okay. And I mean, come on. Who telegraphs this stuff? I think that's a bad move. Again, if you're a retired chief of police and you want to school me and say, no, it's exactly what you do, Rich. That's the right thing to do. Then, hey, let's have that talk. But I think this was a bad move personally. And I want to know what Phil thinks. Phil is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, listening on KDKA, America's oldest radio station. Phil, go right ahead.
Oh, yeah, Rich. It's just terrible around here. Last week over here in Oakland, some girl getting off the bus was assaulted and raped at like 2:30 or 3 in the morning. And then you got on the south side, where it's supposed to be a good neighborhood, shootings happening between those hours of 3 and 7 a.m., and you got like $500,000 houses over there, and this stuff still happens, and it's just crazy.
We're seeing a decay in our society, a decay in the moral fabric of America, and it's sad. And this is why I bring these preachers and reverends and pastors and everybody else that can lend, some voice to this morality issue that we have. We have young people that just don't care about humanity, don't care about life. I tend to think that, I've tried to do the best I can with my children, but I find it fascinating when I hear my children, especially my 18-year-old daughter, sometimes I just see her react to certain things that she sees amongst her peers or younger. And she just, like, her eyes pop out of her head, and she's like, wow, you would beat me. You would beat me if I did that. And I laugh, but I think, this is what happens when you don't have a father, these other kids, and it's a really, really tough scenario to watch where even, my daughter, who's a Generation Zer, she sees this decay in our society. It's not like it's just people, 40 and up that are seeing it. It's so unfortunate, and it's where we are. And if we don't each one teach one, as the old proverb says, I think we stay here. We get stuck here. Because otherwise, we're screwed, Phil.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, definitely. And another thing I wanted to mention was that one time I needed the cops because some kids were throwing rocks at me, and they actually caught the kids, but then they ran into someone's yard, and when the cops came back up, they told me that they're not allowed to go and chase suspects into people's yards anymore. That's crazy.
That is, I don't know. I just don't know what to say anymore. When I hear stuff like that, I think, man, that is nuts. If you got the bad guys, get the bad guys, right? The idea of getting bad guys is so that they pay a price and that they're not willing to do it again. If they run away and they get away, then they're going to run away again. The incentive is on running away and getting away. It's whatever you incentivize is what you're going to get. And this is why we have the problems we have in Washington. It's why we have the problems we have on the streets. We're incentivizing bad behavior. We're incentivizing people doing the wrong thing and not being held accountable in any way. And as long as we have that, the problems persist. Thank you, Phil, for your call. Big shout out to everybody listening in Pittsburgh. Godspeed to you, especially between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. Let me see. We continue, and we go to Sarah. Sarah's in Bedford, Indiana. WBIW. Sarah, welcome back.
Hey, well,
I totally back you for calling shift for brains. I understand your caller would like to have a civilized world, and if we had civilized opponents, that would certainly be in order. But the liberals and the radical progressives have shown that they are not only going to be uncivil, but they're not even going to follow the rule of law, and they're going to violate our rights under the color of law. So the time for civility is long lost. And unless the other side wants to return to a civilized state, we need to fight them with the same ruthlessness that they're fighting us, or not, we're going to lose. One side can't be mismanners and follow every rule, and the other side gets to break the rules. You can't have an uneven war like that. It's like one side fights with words and the other fight with guns. Who's going to win? So I back you. You got to fight them hard and strong. You're kind of like Trump. You just got to say what needs to be said, and if they're offended, wow, we could only wish that the worst thing they did to us was offend us.
Yeah, and it's a good point. Thank you, by the way, for saying that. But I agree. I agree with both of you, honestly. I think we do have to have some civility. I don't ever come to work thinking I hate the Democrats. I don't want the Democrats. I don't want my children to marry Democrats. I don't want to have Democrat neighbors. I really don't think like that. I would prefer my children marry people that are conservative. I really would, but I don't like say, oh, you're whatever. I would never go on a date with you. I don't, and again, probably because of the circumstance of where I live. Good luck finding someone that's not. But the bigger issue is I believe we have to coexist, and we have to have that level of civility. I think radio, being in this world of entertainment and information, is a different world, and sometimes it adds a little bit of color to the commentary when you can have a funny, a memorable name, a term of endearment, if you will, even if it's a little bit sharp. I think that's part of it. But the other part of it is I'm not calling them right now. I might on occasion, and I mean it, and I try to back it up when I do. Like they call me or you, right? A domestic violent extremist, MAGA extremist, all these radical titles that aren't very radical, in my opinion. I don't think my views are radical, but they might be to some. But I think their views are radical. Like they literally are 1960s radicals that have been normalized in today's society. So I think when I say something's radical, I believe I'm using the right sense of the word. And unfortunately, it's this us versus them, othering, ostracizing type of treatment of people that you disagree with politically that seems to have permeated our national discourse, our civil discourse, making it less civil. And that wasn't something Republicans started. I can guarantee you that. This was something that was started by the radical left. AOC and her ilk doing what they do. And now she's getting a taste of it herself. I'm sure many of you have seen that video that's going around of her being accosted by two pro-Hamas activists. And it's just interesting how funny things work out for people when the shoe is on the other foot. Right, Sarah?
Oh, yeah. She sure didn't like being called out, and yet she's more than happy to harass other people. Well, dose of her own medicine.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate your thoughts, and I thank Frank for bringing up this topic of civility. I think it's an excellent topic. If you want to weigh in on that, feel free. We're also going to talk about some of the civility that Joe Biden has showed in his comments towards Trump over the years. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio's ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Press always asks me, don't I wish I were debating him? No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym. That's what I wish.
That is Joe Biden being civil, saying he wishes he could beat the heck out of Trump, take him behind the gym and give him the old 1-2, work him over. Anyway, that's Joe El Baboso Biden in all of his glory, splendor, and civility. Let's go to Becky, Bloomington, Illinois, WHOW. Becky, welcome.
Good morning, or should I say evening. I called to tell you, everybody's watching Joe Biden during this election. I do not believe that he is as bad off as they're making him out to be. Yeah. They're having him do this on purpose. This way, if he loses the election, they can use that an excuse as to why he lost. But otherwise, I don't think he's as bad as what they're making him out to be.
Yeah, well, honestly, I think that those that make him out to be, I think, are the Republicans, right? I think there are a few things Republicans are guilty of here. I think Republicans are guilty of overplaying Hunter Biden's addiction. I think Republicans are guilty of overplaying Joe Biden's mental acuity. I think the age thing, and I guess that's debatable. Some might turn to me and go, yeah, Rich, that's why it's like the number one thing in every poll, because we've been hitting it for the last 4 years. Maybe that is right. But I think it made him, kind of sympathetic to people that like old people that are, forgetful. And I don't know if it's enough for them to freak out and be like, we got to get him out of here. I think it's more like, I'll just avoid him if I have to, like that uncle at, one of your family dinners that you don't want to talk to. I think that's more the speed. The other thing I think that is a creation of folks right of center is the idea of Michelle Obama running for president. I don't think there's a Democrat anywhere that thinks that that's actually happening. I mean, maybe I'll eat these words soon, and that's fine. I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. But I don't think so. I don't think that she's positioning herself for anything like that. I don't see it in any way. I mean, yes, they put out that statement, and, I speculated whether it was the old switcheroo. They were going to, say it no and then say yes and then say no. I really don't think so. I think life is too good for Barack and Michelle for her to enter any type of race. That's my belief. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. But I think those are two of the things that Republicans pretty much have created on their own that are not necessarily always the case, Becky.
You still there?
I am. Are you?
Yeah, I wanted to say another thing.
Sure.
As far as Obama goes, I remember back when Hillary did all that on her, what was it? She bleach-bitsed everything,
Oh, well, yeah, the email servers.
Right. She had all them papers, and she sent them all to Obama. And he's got all those papers, and not one person has investigated any of that.
Well, I mean, again, these are people. He was president, and she was Secretary of State, right? And they were outgoing, but, I mean, they had these papers anyway, and they even had the clearance to have those papers at some point in official capacity. Now, I'm not saying that she should have had it or she didn't do anything wrong. I think it was clear she did plenty wrong. And she put herself and her server in a position that was vulnerable where foreign actors could likely do something and we would be none the wiser. So I'm with you on that one. But I just don't know that we see anything come of that. I wish there would have been something like that, damaging government phones, breaking them with a hammer, pouring bleach on top of them. Talk about destroying the evidence. The one guy today in the House committee hearing said that they had slid the items over to the recycling bin. I mean, the stuff that Hillary Clinton did to those devices was, incomparable to what we heard today. It was like kids play. Anyway, thank you for your call, Becky. I'm going to take a pause right here. We're going to come back and wrap it up. Folks, don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And it's been clear that my colleagues want to keep him around. And now we have his trial in less than 2 months, and that's going to handle it.
I mean, what does it say about this institution that he's still serving in here?
I don't know what it says other than that they guess they're just okay with having a sleazeball in the Senate.
Well, that is racist, Senator Fetterman. Of course, he's talking about Cuban-American Senator Bob Menendez, also known as Gold Bar Bob. We know Gold Bar Bob from the movie where he was putting gold bars in his jacket in his closet and taking bribes and all sorts of stuff. Oh, wait, that's right, with foreign governments. And good old Gold Bar Bob, he got into some trouble, and Senator Fetterman is saying, no more. No more. I'm not messing with you, bro. I'm not messing with you. Let's see what happens. I think Menendez has announced he's not running for re-election, and this is it. This is the end of the road for him. The question is, does he get off where he doesn't have to go to jail and he can walk away from this thing, or does he have to live within the confines? Who knows? Who knows what happens with him? But it doesn't seem bright from what I can see. Doesn't seem bright for for Bob Menendez. John Fetterman, on the other hand, I think he's hedging his bets very cleverly, right? He is making sure that those that can write him off politically, that they don't, because they're like, oh, he's been good on a few issues. He was tough on Menendez. He's a Democrat, but, we kind of like him. He wears those funny hats and this and that. He's always got his hoodie on, and that there's an appeal to that with certain communities. And good for him. If it works for him, it works for him. I think that the bottom line is, I don't know. I don't know how much that's going to work. And I don't know what's happening with Gold Bar Bob. Anyway, that's enough on Gold Bar Bob. Now, again, a quick commercial for the podcast for both America at Night and for This Is America. There are two separate podcasts. Of course, the long-form interviews, Open Phone America, and all of our different segments with commentary are all available as podcast daily. And we also do a weekly podcast where it's usually just me and some commentary. Every now and again, I'll put a guest on there. But for the most part, it's no guests. It's all commentary for about 30 or 45 minutes. And I hope that you'll subscribe to both of them. Anyway, check it out at the website, richvaldez.com. That's Valdez with an S. And folks, I want to thank you. Hasta mañana. Hasta la próxima. Until tomorrow, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I am Rich Valdez, and we're going to do it again tomorrow, God willing.